You should be dead, not here. My son-in-law screamed this in front of the whole family, while my own daughter spit on my plate during Christmas dinner. Everyone applauded. I walked out into the snow, not realizing they had just signed their own sentence. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon because we have new stories every day. Leave a like and tell us in the comments which city you are watching from. My name is William Parker. I'm 68 years old, and all my life I believed family was the most sacred thing in existence. I was an architect for 40 years. I designed buildings that still adorned the skyline of Chicago, and I retired at 58 thinking I would dedicate my last years to enjoying my daughter Jessica and my two grandkids, Ashley and Justin. How wrong I was. It was December 24th, 2023, Christmas Eve. The night that, according to all the stories, should be full of love, family, unity, and hope. I drove from my apartment in Lincoln Park to Neepville, where Jessica lives with her husband Richard and my grandkids in a mansion that I designed and paid for myself. I invested $50,000 in that house in 2015. Every brick was placed with the dream of seeing my daughter happy, safe, and protected. I arrived at 8 p.m. with the trunk full of gifts. For Ashley, who is 16, I had bought a new laptop worth $1,500 that she needed for her graphic design studies. For Justin, who is 14, a professional mountain bike worth $1,000 that he had been asking for months. For Jessica and Richard, a gourmet basket with premium ham, expensive wines, and Artisol chocolates that cost $400. I am not rich, but my architect's pension allows me these details for the people I love or the people I thought I loved. When I rang the doorbell, it was Richard who opened the door. His look was strange from the first second, a mix of contempt and something I now recognize as anticipated guilt. "You are late, William," he said, without calling me Dad, like he always did. No smile, no usual hug. He was 45 years old, but in that moment, he seemed like a stranger. Traffic was complicated. "Richard, Merry Christmas," I replied, extending my hand. He ignored it and turned around, walking into the house. "Jessica, your father is here," he shouted with a tone I had never heard before. Cold, hostile. I walked in carrying the bags of gifts and found the scene that should have been warm and welcoming. The table was set with the Christmas tablecloth I had given Jessica 3 years ago. Scented candles lit the tree decorated with golden lights. But there was something disturbing in the atmosphere. The two guests sitting around the table looked at me with expressions ranging from discomfort to barely disguised mockery. Jessica came out of the kitchen. My daughter, my only daughter who is 42 years old, and whom I carried in my arms when she was a baby. She looked at me as if I were a nuisance. "Hello, Dad," she said without coming close to kiss me without smiling. She was wearing an expensive red dress I did not remember seeing before, probably $600 or $700. Her eyes were made up, but there was something hard in them. Something I had never seen. "Hello, honey. Merry Christmas. I brought gifts for everyone," I said, trying to break the strange tension filling the room. I left the bags by the tree and stepped closer to hug her. Jessica took a step back, a small step, almost imperceptible, but it pierced my heart like a knife. "The kids are in their rooms. You can sit there." She pointed to a chair at the far end of the table, the furthest from the head, where obviously she and Richard would sit. It was not my usual spot. I always sat near Jessica between my grandkids. But that night they relegated me to the end like a low-ass guest. I sat in silence while the guests watched me. I recognized some of them. Mark and Ellen, friends of Richard, the Castle brothers, business partners of my son-in-law, an older couple I did not know. Everyone avoided direct eye contact, but I felt their eyes digging into me when I looked away. Ashley and Justin finally came down. My grandkids, The kids I had taken to the park every Sunday for years. The kids for whom I paid private tutoring for one $500 a month. The kids I loved as if they were my own children. Ashley walked past me without saying hello, sitting next to her mother. Justin shot me a quick look, something like pity or shame, before taking his seat. "Well, now that we're all here, we can eat," announced Richard, pouring himself wine. Jessica brought the trays from the kitchen. Roast beef, seafood, elaborate salads, a dinner that easily cost $500. I wondered where they had gotten the money, considering Richard had closed his import business 6 months ago, and Jessica earned barely $200 to $500 a month as a store manager. The dinner passed in an uncomfortable silence, interrupted only by whispered conversations between the guests. No one spoke to me. It was as if I were invisible. I tried to start a conversation with Justin, asking about his studies, but Jessica intervened sharply. "Justin, do not bother your grandfather with your things. Father my own grandson, bothering me by talking to me." Then the moment arrived. Richard stood up, wine glass in hand, visibly drunk. His bloodshot eyes looked at me with a hatred that froze my blood. "I want to make a toast," he announced with a thick voice. The guests raised their glasses expectantly. I raised mine too, innocent, trusting. "To family," Richard began. "To the true family that stays united without burdens, without loads, without parasites, who only bring problems and shame." He looked directly at me. My heart started beating faster. "There are people," he continued, raising his voice, "who should have the decency to disappear to let us live in peace." People who he stopped took a long sip of his wine, and then he exploded. "You should be dead, William. Dead and buried. Not here ruining our Christmas. You are a living embarrassment, a pathetic old man who does not know when to leave." The silence that followed was absolute. I froze the glass, trembling in my hand. Did I hear correctly? Did my son-in-law just wish for my death in front of the whole family? But the worst was yet to come. Jessica stood up slowly. She walked toward me with determined steps, and before my incredulous eyes, she took my plate of roast beef and spit on it. "Spit! My own daughter!" "We do not need you anymore, you pathetic old man," she said with a coldness I will never forget. And then, like in a surreal nightmare, the guests started to applaud. They applauded. Ashley and Justin joined the applause, smiling. Mark shouted, "Well said." Ellen was laughing. The Castle brothers clinked their glasses. I felt my legs failing. The world was spinning. 70 years of dignity, 40 years of honest work, a whole life dedicated to building and caring. And this was my reward. Public humiliation, contempt, inexplicable hatred. I stood up with difficulty, my hands shaking, my heart beating so hard I feared a heart attack. I said nothing. I could not. The words were stuck in my throat, along with the tears I refused to shed in front of them. I walked toward the door while laughter echoed behind my back. I grabbed my coat from the rack, and in that moment, Ashley shouted, "Do not forget your gifts, Grandpa." "Oh no, wait, we do not want them anymore." I walked out into the night of December 24th. It was snowing. White flakes fell over Chicago, covering the streets with a blanket that in other circumstances I would have found beautiful. But that night, walking to my car under the snow, I only felt cold. A cold that came from inside, from a place in the soul that had just broken into 1,000 pieces. I drove to my apartment crying for the first time in decades. I did not understand anything. What had I done? What had changed? Why this sudden and inexplicable hatred? But as I walked up the stairs of my building, as I opened the door to my empty and silent home, something began to awaken inside me. It was not just pain, it was something else. A small but persistent spark. Because I am William Parker, architect for 40 years, and I knew one thing they had forgotten. Before building any building, one must study every inch of the terrain. And before destroying someone, You should make sure you know all their foundations. They had just made their first mistake, and I, without knowing it yet, was about to become the architect of their ruin. I arrived at my apartment around 11 at night. The doorman, Mr. Sergio, greeted me as always. "Good evening, Mr. Parker. Merry Christmas." I could not answer him. I nodded and continued to the elevator with my legs still trembling, my coat wet from the snow, and a pain in my chest. I did not know if it was anguish or something more serious. I live on the 3rd floor in Lincoln Park. It is a 1,000 QFT apartment I bought when Jessica was 22 and had just finished college. I thought then it would be temporary, that I would find something bigger for when she formed her own family and came to visit me frequently. How naive I was. I closed the door behind me, and the silence hit me like a concrete wall. No Christmas music, no laughter, no hugs, only me and the white boss, that suddenly seemed too cold, too hospital-like, too similar to a morgue. I took off my coat and let it drop to the floor, something I never do. I am a tidy, meticulous man used to everything having its place. But that night I did not care. I walked to the living room and let myself fall onto the brown leather sofa I bought 10 years ago at a department store downtown. Jessica accompanied me that day. I remember she sat on the same sofa testing it and said, "It is perfect for you, Dad. Elegant, but comfortable. Just like you." And then for the first time in I do not know how many years, I broke down. I cried like I had not cried since my wife Linda died 18 years ago. I cried with deep sobs coming from somewhere dark in my chest. Hot tears soaking my cheeks and falling onto the shirt I'd carefully ironed that morning, thinking I was going to a joyful family dinner. You should be dead. Richard's words resonated over and over in my head like a funeral bell. We do not need you anymore, you pathetic old man. The voice of Jessica, my little girl, my only daughter, the baby I held in my arms, at the hospital on March 3rd, 1981. I stood up stumbling and went to my bedroom. I opened the closet and took an old shoebox from the top shelf. Inside, I kept photographs I had not looked at in years. Why does it hurt? Because remembering happy times when the present is painful is like drinking poison voluntarily. But that night, I needed to remember. I needed to understand if everything had been a lie from the beginning or if something had changed. The first photo showed Jessica at 5 years old in the park. I was holding her on my shoulders, and she was laughing with that carefree child's laugh. 1986. Linda was still alive. We were happy, or so I thought. Another photo. Jessica at 15 on her high school graduation day. I had designed and built a small porch at our old house to celebrate with all her friends. I spent $3,000 I did not have. But seeing her smile was worth every penny. In the photo, she is hugging me, and there is a sign I made with my own hands. Proud of my daughter Jessica. More photos. Her wedding to Richard in 2007. I paid for everything. The reception hall for $15,000, the wedding dress for $4,000, the professional photographer, the flowers, the banquet for 150 guests. Jessica cried that day and told me, "You are the best father in the world. I do not know how to repay you for all this." I replied, "You do not have to pay me anything, honey. Seeing your happiness is more than enough." The birth of Ashley in 2009. I was in the waiting room when Jessica came out after the delivery. They let me in to meet my first granddaughter. Ashley was tiny, wrinkled, perfect. "She looks like Mom?" Jessica said, referring to Linda, who had died 2 years earlier. "Mom would be so happy." We cried together that day, but they were good tears. Tears of new life. Justin arrived in 2011, another boy for the Parker family. I held him in my arms and felt my life had renewed purpose. Being a grandfather was my second chance to get it right, to be present, to be the pillar these kids would need. And I was. For 13 years, I was the grandfather any child would wish for. I picked them up from school twice a week. I took them to swimming lessons. I paid for their school uniforms, their books, their field trips. When Ashley wanted to study graphic design and needed a computer for $500, I bought it for her without thinking. When Justin broke his previous bike and was devastated, I bought him a new one for $800. But while I looked at these photographs in the early morning of December 25th, something began to change in my head. The tears kept falling, but now they were accompanied by something else. Questions. I got up and went to the kitchen. I made strong coffee, although it was already 2 a.m. I needed to think clearly. I took out my old notebook where I record monthly expenses. I am from the generation that still writes by hand, that keeps receipts, that keeps precise accounts. I started reviewing the last 6 months. June 2023. Jessica canceled our usual lunch on the first Sunday saying she had things to do. Strange, but I did not give it importance. July, another canceled lunch. The kids have activities, Dad. August. I called 4 times. She answered only once and the conversation lasted less than 3 minutes. September. I went to visit them without warning, and Richard almost did not let me in. It is not a good time, William. Jessica is busy. October. Ashley turned 16. I was not invited to the party. I found out on Facebook when I saw photos. November. I tried to take Justin to soccer practice like we did every Saturday. Jessica said it was no longer necessary, that Richard would do it. Lie. I drove by the sports field and Justin was not there. 6 months of gradual distancing, 6 months of excuses, 6 months where I stupidly thought it was normal that they were busy, that Jessica had finally matured and did not need me as much. But there was more small details that now took on meaning. In September, when I managed to get into the house for a few minutes, I saw Ashley had a new iPhone. That model costs $1,000 minimum. Jessica earns $2,500 a month, and Richard had closed his business. Where did the money come from? In October, Justin casually mentioned they were going to change the family car. A new SUV costs at least $40,000. How? And then there was what I saw in November when I went to the bank to make a deposit. I was in line when I saw Richard in the manager's office. They were talking heatedly. Richard slammed the table. The manager shook his head. Richard stormed out without seeing me. What was he doing asking for something at the bank with such desperation? It was 4:30 in the morning when I finished reviewing everything. The coffee had gone cold. The photos were scattered on the dining table, and I had gone from crying inconsolably to feeling something different. It was not rage yet, it was curiosity, which was the same sensation I had when I started a new architectural project. And something in the blueprints did not add up, when the calculations made no sense, when the terrain had to be investigated more deeply, because something was hidden under the surface. The humiliation tonight was not spontaneous. It was planned. 12 guests present, all applauding, as if they had rehearsed. Richard's words too specific, too cruel to be the product of alcohol. Jessica's spit perfectly synchronized. The kids laughing without shame. Everything orchestrated. But why? What did they gain by humiliating me publicly? What purpose did it serve to destroy me in that way? I got up and went to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror. I am 68 years old, but my doctor says I am in excellent health. White hair but abundant. Wrinkles that speak of smiles more than bitterness. Eyes still clear and attentive. Mind absolutely lucid. I am not rich but not poor either. I have my architect's pension of $3,000 a month. I have this apartment paid off completely. I have savings. The savings. My blood froze. I have $120,000 saved in Chase Bank. $120,000. I gathered over 40 years of work, depriving myself of luxuries, investing carefully, thinking always of leaving something for Jessica and the grandkids when I was gone. Would it be as simple and as horrible as that? It was 5 in the morning on December 25th when I sat again on the sofa and made a decision. I was not going to stay crying like a pathetic old man. I was not going to let them destroy me without understanding why first. I was not going to die without knowing the truth. I had spent 40 years reading terrains, interpreting invisible signs, finding hidden problems under apparently solid foundations. It was time to apply those skills to my own life. Jessica and Richard had just made a mistake. They had underestimated me. They thought a 68-year-old man would simply give up, disappear, die conveniently and silently. They did not know William Parker. The bank would open on December 26th. I would be there waiting at the door. December 26th dawned gray over Chicago. I had barely slept 2 hours, but I was completely awake when the clock struck 7 in the morning. I showered with cold water to wake up. I shaved carefully, watching every stroke in the mirror, and chose my best gray Oxford suit, white shirt, impeccable navy blue tie. If I was going to face whatever awaited me, I would do it with dignity. The Chase Bank on Michigan Avenue opens at 8:30 on special business days like this. Between Christmas and New Year, I arrived at 8:15. I was the first in line. The December cold soaked my bones, but I did not move from the entrance. I needed ulcers, and I needed them now. At 8:28, a young employee opened the glass doors. She recognized me immediately. "Good morning, Mr. Parker. You are up early today." I smiled without feeling it and went straight to the customer service counters. I asked to speak with Sarah Jenkins, the account manager, who has handled my financial affairs for 15 years. "She is in a meeting, Mr. Parker. Can you wait a few minutes?" The receptionist seemed nervous. Something was odd. "I will wait as long as necessary," I replied, sitting in the black leather chairs of the waiting area. I took out my phone and checked messages. Nothing from Jessica, nothing from the grandkids. Absolute silence after the storm. 10 minutes passed. 15 and 20. I was starting to get impatient when I saw Sarah come out of her glass office on the second floor. She was 52 years old, short brown hair, always professional. But when our eyes met, I saw something that alarmed me. Genuine concern. She came down the stairs quickly and approached me. "William, thank God you came. I need to speak with you urgently. Please come to my office." Her tone was grave, almost whispering. She did not call me Mr. Parker as she always did in front of other employees. Something was very wrong. We went up to the second floor and entered her office. She locked the door and closed the interior blinds. My heart began to race. "Sarah, what is happening? You are scaring me." She sat in front of me and breathed deeply. "William, I am going to be direct because I appreciate you and because this is very serious. On December 22nd, 4 days ago, your daughter Jessica came to this bank with documentation that made my hair stand on end. I felt my stomach contract." "What type of documentation?" Sarah opened a file cabinet and took out a manila folder. She placed it on the desk between us. "Medical documents signed by a supposed neurologist from Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Reports certifying that you, William Parker, suffer from advanced Alzheimer's with progressive dementia, that you are not capable of managing your own financial affairs, that you represent a danger to yourself." The world stopped. The words floated in the air, but it took me several seconds to process them. "Alzheimer's me, that is absurd." "I am perfectly fine, I know," Sarah said quickly. "That is exactly what I suspected from the first moment. You were here on December 19th, just a week ago. You reorganized your investments. We discussed supplemental pension fund options. We talked about international markets. You were absolutely lucid sharp, more informed than most of my 30-year-old clients." I took the folder with shaking hands. I opened the first page. There it was. A medical report with the letterhead of Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Patient William Parker, age 68. Diagnosis: severe cognitive deterioration, compatible with Alzheimer's disease in advanced moderate phase. 3 pages of medical jargon followed describing symptoms I had never experienced. Recent memory loss, temporal disorientation, inability to perform daily tasks, episodes of aggression. "This is false," I said with a hoarse voice. "Completely false. I have never gone to a neurologist. My primary doctor is Dr. Wilson at the Rush Clinic, and he gives me annual checkups. The last one was in October. Everything normal." "I assume so," Sarah replied. "That is why I did not process Jessica's request. She came demanding I give her full power of attorney over all your accounts. Total access to the $120,000 you have in savings, plus the investment funds and the checking account, absolute control of your entire financial estate, $120,000, my entire life's work, my security, the inheritance I plan to leave my grandkids for their college tuition. Jessica wanted to snatch it all from me." "What did you tell her?" My voice sounded strange, as if it came from another person. "I told her I needed to verify the documentation with our legal and medical department, that these types of processes take time." She was furious. She shouted that it was urgent, that you could do something crazy at any moment, that it was dangerous for you to have access to money. I explained that by banking protocol, when there is suspicion of cognitive deterioration, we must interview the account holder personally before any action. She became hysterical. She threatened to take the case to a judge to sue the bank for negligence. I had to ask her to calm down, or I would call security. Sarah paused and looked me directly in the eyes. "William, there is something else." I investigated the medical report letterhead. I called Northwestern Memorial Hospital directly to the neurology department. The doctor whose name appears on the document does not exist. It is an invented name. The stamps look authentic, but they are forgeries. Pretty good ones. This is not a mistake or misunderstanding. It is deliberate fraud. Fraud. My daughter had tried to commit bank fraud using fake medical documents to rob me, to declare me incompetent, to keep everything I had built in 68 years of life. "There is more," Sarah continued with an even lower voice. "I reviewed your account movements from the last few months. On November 18th, there was an unauthorized access attempt from an IP address in Neepville. Someone tried to enter your online banking using your username but with the wrong password. 3 failed attempts. The system blocked access automatically, and we sent you an alert email. Did you receive it? I tried to remember. November. I had been busy with a consulting project for an old colleague. I think I saw something like that, but I thought it was spam or a system error. I did not give it importance. It was not an error. Someone who knows your username tried to access your money, and then 20 days later, your daughter appears with fake documents to achieve the same thing legally. This was planned. William planned with time and premeditation. I leaned back in the chair, feeling my chest weigh pow-tons. The pieces started fitting together in a macabre way. The 6 months of distancing, the constant excuses, the canceled lunches, everything designed to create distance so that when the moment came to present me as a senile and abandoned old man, there would be fewer people who could contradict that version. And the Christmas dinner, my God. The Christmas dinner. Sarah, I need to tell you something that happened the day before yesterday. I told her everything. The public humiliation. Richard's shout, wishing me dead. Jessica's spit. The 12 witnesses applauding. While I spoke, I saw Sarah's face go pale. Witnesses, she whispered when I finished. They created witnesses. 12 people who can now testify before a judge that they saw you senile, out of place, inappropriate, that your own family had to kick you out because you were ruining the celebration. If this goes to court, and those 12 people testify, they saw you acting strangely. Combined with the fake medical reports, they could build a case to incapacitate you legally. The room was spinning. This was not simple greed. It was an elaborate plan to destroy me legally, financially, and socially, to declare me insane, snatch my autonomy, and leave me locked in some nursing home while they enjoyed my money. What do I do? The question came out as a desperate whisper. Sarah, what can I do? She leaned forward with determination. First, we are going to protect your money right now. I am going to create a new account with restricted access. Only you will be able to operate it. We will change all your passwords, activate two-factor authentication, and I will put alerts for any suspicious activity. Second, I'm going to give you certified copies of all this fraudulent documentation. You will need them. And third, William, you need a lawyer, a good one. This is serious. I do not know lawyers, I admitted, feeling suddenly old and vulnerable. I have never needed one. I do know someone, James Sterling. He is a specialist in financial fraud and family law. He worked on a similar case 2 years ago, where some children tried to declare their father incompetent to keep a $200 and $1,000 inheritance. He won the case, and the children ended up with restraining orders. He is tough, relentless, but honest. Do you want me to call him? I nodded wordlessly. Sarah took her phone and dialed. She spoke for 5 minutes explaining the situation. When she hung up, she looked at me with something resembling hope. He can see you today at 5 hours in the afternoon at his office on Michigan Avenue. I explained it as urgent. We spent the next hour securing my accounts. Sarah worked with military efficiency. New account, new codes, double security alerts activated. She handed me a manila envelope with certified copies of the fake documents records of the access attempts and a statement signed by her as manager explaining everything that occurred. One last thing, William, she said, walking me to the exit. Be very careful. If Jessica and Richard are willing to go this far, we do not know what else they could do. When they discover their plan failed, do not trust anyone in your family until this is resolved, and please keep your phone on. If anything happens, call me. I left the bank at 11 in the morning with the envelope under my arm and a frozen certainty in my heart. My daughter, the girl I carried on my shoulders in the park, not only hated me, she wanted me destroyed, incapacitated, annulled, and she had been willing to commit fraud forgery of medical documents and theft to get it. But she had made a mistake, a fatal one. She had underestimated me. William Parker, architect for 40 years, knew better than anyone that the best foundations are the ones no one sees. And I had just started building mine. The hours between my exit from the bank and the appointment with the lawyer passed in a strange mix of anxiety and determination. I returned to my apartment, prepared a light lunch I barely touched, and dedicated myself to organizing everything I had. As an architect, I was always methodical. Every project began with exhaustive documentation analysis of the terrain identification of potential problems. Now I would apply that same methodology to my own survival. I spread all relevant papers on the dining table. On the left, the bank documents Sarah had given me, the fake medical reports, the records of attempts to access my account, her certified statement. In the center, my own financial records receipts for the $50,000 I paid for Jessica's house in 2015, monthly transfers of $1,500 for the grandkids' expenses since 2018, receipts for the car I bought Jessica for $28,000 in 2020. On the right, photographs and notes from the last 6 months showing the pattern of distancing. I took my architect's notebook, that same one where for decades I drew blueprints and structural calculations, and began to create something different, a chronological map of the betrayal. June 2023, first lunch canceled. July 2nd, rejection. August call unanswered. September, rejection at her door. October, excluded from Ashley's birthday. November, attempted access to my bank account. Sighting of Richard arguing at the bank. December, fake medical documents presented on the 22nd. Public humiliation on the 24th. The pattern was clear as a well-drawn architectural plan. Every step designed to isolate me to create the narrative of a senile and distant old man. The question that gnawed at me was why now what had changed in their lives that they needed my money with such desperation. At 4:15 in the afternoon, I left for Michigan Avenue. James Sterling's office was in a restored 19th century building. I went up to the 4th floor in an old wrought iron elevator and found a gold plaque. Sterling and Associates Civil and Criminal Law. I took a deep breath and entered. The receptionist, a young woman, received me with warm professionalism. "Mr. Parker, Lawyer Sterling, is expecting you this way, please." She led me down a corridor with dark wood-paneled walls and paintings of old sailboats to a door at the end. She knocked twice and opened. James Sterling was 48 years old, as I learned later, but looked younger, tall, thin, with metal-rimmed glasses and an impeccable gray suit. He got up from his desk and shook my hand firmly. "Mr. Parker, thanks for coming. Sarah Jenkins briefed me on your situation, and I must tell you, it is one of the most concerning cases I have seen lately. Please sit down and tell me everything from the beginning." For 40 minutes, I recounted the full story. I omitted nothing. The Christmas humiliation, the 6 months of distancing, the attempted bank fraud, the forged documents. James took notes on a tablet, interrupting me occasionally, only to clarify dates or specific details. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair with a serious expression. "William, can I call you William Good? This is serious. Very serious. We are talking about forgery of medical documentation, attempted misappropriation, possible conspiracy to commit fraud. But before moving forward legally, I need to know more about the motives. You mentioned Richard closed his company 6 months ago. Do you know what real economic situation they are in?" I shook my head. "I only know Jessica earns $2,500 a month as a manager of a clothing store at the mall. Richard had an electronics import company, but it was always problematic. He closed it officially in June, according to what Jessica told me at the time, saying he wanted to reinvent himself professionally. I did not know more details." James nodded thoughtfully. "We need to investigate. With your authorization, I'm going to hire a trusted private investigator. His name is Frank Miller, ex-police, very discreet and very effective. He will review public records, Richard's tax situation, possible debts, liens, lawsuits. He will also track legally accessible bank movements and verify if there are mortgages or loans associated with the Neepville property. The house is in Jessica's name," I clarified. "I paid the $50,000 down payment, and they assumed the remaining $120,000 mortgage with the bank, or that was the agreement in 2015. We are going to verify that too. Now about the fake medical documents, this is a criminal offense, according to the Penal Code prison time. But here comes the important part. Do you want to file criminal charges against your daughter?" The question hit me like a punch. It was one thing to defend my assets. Another very different thing was to send Jessica to prison. I do not know. She is my daughter." "I understand," James said with genuine empathy. "But you need to understand something. If you do not act forcefully now, they will try again. People willing to go this far do not stop easily. My recommendations to prepare all possible legal actions. Criminal complaint for forgery. Civil lawsuit to recover the money invested in the house, and urgent precautionary measures to protect your assets and your person. Then you decide which one to execute, but having them ready is fundamental." He was right. I nodded slowly. "Go ahead. Prepare everything necessary." James smiled with approval. "Good. I'm going to need you to sign an authorization for Frank to investigate in your name. I also want you to start documenting absolutely everything. Any call from Jessica or Richard, record it if possible. Any message, save it. Any encounter, write it down with date, time, and witnesses. We are building a case, and every detail counts. And he handed me several documents to sign. While I reviewed them, James made a call. Frank, it is James. I have an urgent case for you. I need a full investigation on Richard and Jessica Parker. Yes, for tomorrow if possible. Perfect. I am sending you the data. He hung up and turned to me again. Frank will start tonight. He is fast when there is urgency. On the other hand, I need you to go to your primary doctor tomorrow. Dr. Wilson asked him to do a full cognitive evaluation and certify in writing that you are in full mental faculties. We need official contrast against those fake reports. I will do it tomorrow. First thing I promised. Excellent. Now a difficult question. Besides the $120,000 in the bank, do you have other assets, properties, investments, life insurance? This apartment is completely paid off, worth approximately $350,000. I have a life insurance policy of $50,000 with Jessica as beneficiary, and I have stocks in tech companies I bought in 2018 for $60,000. Now they are worth quite a bit more, almost $280,000, according to what I checked this morning. James whistled low. We are talking about a total estate close to $800,000. William, that changes the panorama completely. It is not a family desperate for basic necessity. It is pure greed. We need to protect every dollar tomorrow. Change the beneficiary of the life insurance. Put a charity if you do not have other trusted relatives. And those stocks, where are they? In my investment account at the bank, the same one Sarah secured today. Good. But we're going to do something additional. I recommend creating a trust or a more complex legal structure. The idea is that even if someone wanted to declare you incompetent, your assets would be protected by previous legal structures demonstrating your lucidity when creating them. We spent another hour reviewing details, signing authorizations, planning moves. When I left James Sterling's office at 7 p.m., the Chicago sky was already dark. It was cold, but inside me burned something different. I was no longer just the humiliated old man from Christmas dinner. I was a man with a plan, with professional allies, with resources and determination. My phone vibrated. A message from Jessica. Dad, we need to talk. It is important. Please call me. I read it 3 times. Had she discovered I went to the bank? Had Sarah called, warning her that her fraud was detected? I did not reply. Following James' advice, I only took a screenshot and saved the message as evidence. I walked down Michigan Avenue while Christmas lights still adorned the city. Families strolled happily. Kids ran among illuminated trees. Couples kissed under decorative M arches. I walked alone, but for the first time in 2 days, I did not feel destroyed. I felt like what I had always been, an architect. And the best architects know that before building something beautiful, sometimes you have to demolish rotten structures down to the foundations. On December 27th, I woke up at 6:00 a.m. with a clear purpose. I called Dr. Wilson's office as soon as they opened at 8. It is urgent. I need a full evaluation as soon as possible, I explained to the receptionist. They gave me an appointment for 10. Dr. Wilson had treated me for 12 years, man of 63, serious but cordial. When I entered his office and explained the situation, his face went from surprise to anger. Someone forged an Alzheimer's diagnosis in your name, William. That is criminal. I did a full checkup on you 2 months ago. Your cognitive analysis was perfect. Excellent memory, impeccable temporal orientation, logical reasoning superior to the average for your age. He subjected me for an hour and a half to exhaustive tests, short and long-term memory tests, mental calculation exercises, motor coordination, evaluations, questionnaires about recent events. When he finished, he drafted a 4-page report certifying my absolute cognitive capacity without signs of any neurological deterioration. He handed me 3 stamped and signed copies. Use them well, he said, shaking my hand firmly. And if you need me to testify before a judge, count on me. I left the office with the certifications in my briefcase feeling a small victory. Evidence against evidence, truth against lie. But I knew I needed more. At 2:00 in the afternoon, my phone rang. James Sterling. William Frank has worked all night. He has information, a lot of information. Can you come to the office right now? I think you should hear this personally. I arrived at the firm 30 minutes later. This time James was not alone. A robust man of about 55, with the weathered look of someone who has seen too much, stood up when I entered. William Parker, I presume. Frank Miller? His handshake was firm, professional. On the table were folders, printed documents, and an open laptop. "William, sit down, please," James said with a grave voice. What Frank found is disturbing, but you need to know everything before deciding how to proceed. Frank opened the first folder. I started with Richard. Business records show his company entered bankruptcy in May 23rd. Accumulated debts of $150,000 with suppliers, the IRS, and Social Security. The company was officially liquidated in June, but creditors are still chasing Richard personally because he signed as a guarantor $150,000. A fortune lost? How did it get to that point? I asked. Bad management mainly, but there is more. Frank turned to another page. In March 2023, 3 months before closing, a former employee of his company named Charles filed a labor lawsuit against Richard for wrongful termination and unpaid wages. The trial is pending, but testimonies reveal something interesting. Richard was diverting company funds to personal accounts. There is evidence of suspicious transfers worth $40,000 that were never justified accounting-wise. James intervened. That is misappropriation. If proven in the labor trial, Richard could face additional criminal charges. But wait, there is more. Frank continued with a somber expression. I investigated his publicly accessible bank movements through court liens. Turns out Richard has debts with an online betting house registered offshore. $85,000 accumulated between January and August 2023. Sports betting, mainly some online poker. The company has initiated collection proceedings and has a court order to seize any asset in Richard's name. The room was spinning. $150,000 from the bankrupt company, $85,000 in gambling debts, $40,000 diverted. Richard was financially destroyed, desperate, cornered. And here comes the worst part, Frank said, taking out another folder. The house in Neepville that you paid for Jessica. I reviewed the property registry in July 2022-23. Richard mortgaged the property without Jessica's apparent knowledge. He used documentation presenting her as a consenting spouse, but the signature does not match samples of Jessica's signature on other official documents. He obtained $110,000 from the bank. That money disappeared in 6 weeks, probably paying loan sharks who were threatening him. Wait, I interrupted, trying to process. Are you saying he fraudulently mortgaged the house I bought for my daughter? Exactly. And the bank has already initiated foreclosure proceedings because Richard has not paid a single installment. The house will be auctioned judicially in the coming months unless someone pays the $110,000 plus interest. Jessica was going to lose her home. The house I built for her that I paid for with my savings was going to be seized for her husband's criminal debts. And then everything made macabre sense. They needed my money to save the house. I said aloud more to myself than to them. The $120,000 in my bank account, it was exactly what they needed to cancel the fraudulent mortgage and have something left over. Precisely, confirmed James. That is why the urgency. That is why the fake medical documents. That is why the public humiliation to create witnesses of your supposed incapacity. They planned everything to access your money before you lost the house and discovered Richard's fraud. Frank took out his laptop and turned it toward me. And I have the definitive proof. I legally accessed Richard's liquidated company email server. Technically, corporate emails are accessible during bankruptcy proceedings. I found correspondence between Richard and Jessica from the last 4 months. He began to read. From August 20th, Jessica to Richard. We cannot tell Dad about the mortgage. He would go crazy and report us. We have to find another way. Response from Richard. Your father has money in the bank. It is the only solution. Email from September 3rd. Jessica to Richard. I talked to a lawyer friend. She says if Dad were declared incompetent due to dementia, we could manage his accounts legally, but we need medical documentation. Richard responds, I know someone who can get those papers. Every word was a knife. My daughter discussing coldly how to rob me, not for extreme necessity, but to cover her husband's mistakes and vices. Frank continued, email from October 18th. Richard, we need witnesses to confirm Dad is senile. What if we organize something at Christmas at dinner with our friends? We can stage a scene where he seems out of place, inappropriate. 12 witnesses testifying before a judge would be sufficient. Response from Richard. Excellent idea. I will make sure he looks as bad as possible. I could not breathe. The Christmas dinner was not an explosion of hatred. It was calculated theater. Every insult, every humiliation, every laugh from the guests, all choreographed to destroy me legally. There are more emails, Frank said softly, but I think you have seen enough. Do you want me to continue? I shook my head, unable to speak. James got up and poured me a glass of water. I drank mechanically, while tears ran down my cheeks uncontrollably. They were not tears of sadness. They were of rage, of absolute betrayal of the pain of knowing your own blood conspired meticulously to annul you as a person. William James said after a long silence, I know this is devastating, but you have something they did not expect. Concrete evidence, complete documentation, and time to act before they know. Frank has done an extraordinary job in less than 24 hours. Now you decide how to use this information. I wipe my tears with the back of my hand. What options do I have? Multiple. 1 criminal complaint for document forgery, attempted fraud, and conspiracy. 2 civil lawsuit to recover the $50,000 you invested in the house, arguing it was a documented family loan, not a gift. 3 lawsuit against Richard for the fraudulent mortgage that put your investment at risk. 4 urgent precautionary measure for a restraining order. If you fear for your safety, we can do all of them, some or none. You decide. I looked at the documents scattered on the table. Emails, bank records, debts, documented lies. My life reduced to papers showing the betrayal of the one I loved most. I want to do everything I said with a firm voice I did not recognize as mine. Everything that is legal and possible. I want them to face the consequences of every decision they made. It is not revenge, James. It is justice. It is protection. It is making sure they can never do this to anyone else again. James nodded with approval. Then we start tomorrow. Dart. We will prepare the documentation tonight. And William, one more thing. You need to prepare yourself psychologically. When this explodes, Jessica will come with please, tears, promises. You will have to be strong. I will be. I promised. And for the first time since Christmas night, I believed it. The days of December 28th, 29th, and 30th were a whirlwind of coordinated legal activity. James worked with almost frenetic intensity, and I discovered that keeping busy was the best way not to crumble, thinking about what Jessica had done. On the morning of the 28th, we started with the most urgent task, protecting every penny of my assets. We went together to the insurance company office on Michigan Avenue where I had my $50,000 life insurance policy. The agent, an efficient woman named Rose, assisted me when I explained I needed to change the beneficiary. Mr. Parker, are you sure you've had your daughter Jessica? as beneficiary for 17 years? Her tone was cautious. Completely sure, I replied with a firm voice. I want to change the beneficiary to the Salvation Army. I know their work with abandoned elderly people, and it seems appropriate. Rose processed the change in 15 minutes. When we left with the updated documentation, James patted my shoulder. First asset protected. If something happened to you now, Jessica would not see a dime of that insurance. Next step, your stocks. We went to the bank where Sarah was waiting for us with an investment specialist named Fred. For 2 hours, we reviewed my portfolio. The stocks in tech companies I bought in 2018 for $60,000 were now worth $280,000. They were mainly green energy and clean tech companies that had exploded in value. Mr. Parker, you have a very good eye for investments, Fred commented, impressed. This portfolio has outperformed the market by a wide margin. Did you ever consider doing this professionally? I smiled bitterly. It was never for money. It was for believing in a better future. Ironic, right? I invested in the future while my own family planned to destroy mine. Sarah intervened gently. William Fred can help you restructure these investments into a more complex legal vehicle, a personal trust that requires 2 signatures for any movement, yours and that of a neutral administrator. That way, even if someone managed to declare you incompetent, they could not touch the money without passing through multiple legal filters. Let's do it. I accepted without hesitation. Fred prepared the documentation that I signed that same afternoon. My $280,000 in stocks remained protected inside a legal structure naming James as co-administrator. No one, absolutely no one, could touch that money without his additional authorization. On December 29th, James cited a notary friend of his, Mr. Michael Stone, to review deeper legal aspects. His office was in a historic building, with that characteristic smell of old paper and established legality. William began Mr. Stone reviewing documents. What I am going to propose may sound drastic, but it is necessary. You need to make a new will that explicitly excludes Jessica and leaves clear instructions about your wishes. I also recommend creating a living will specifying that you never want to be declared incompetent without evaluation from at least 3 independent doctors designated by you. We spent 3 hours drafting both documents. The new will left the apartment and remaining funds divided between charities and an educational trust for Ashley and Justin, accessible only when they turned 25 and proved they were attending college. Jessica was explicitly excluded, with a clause explaining for acts of family betrayal legally documented. Signing that will was one of the most painful moments of my life. With every signature, I was admitting that my daughter had died to me in a way that not even physical death had achieved when I lost Linda. This was worse. It was death in life. Voluntary, calculated. That afternoon, while I walked back home, my phone rang. Jessica again. 5th message in 3 days. Dad, please. I need to talk to you urgently. It is about your health. I am worried. Following James' instructions, I recorded my screen and saved the message without replying. Every communication from her was additional evidence. On December 30th, something unexpected happened that would change everything. I received a call from a number I did not recognize. I hesitated to answer, but something compelled me to do it. William, it is Thomas King. Do you remember me? The voice was warm, familiar, although I had not heard it in years. Thomas King Architecture School, classmate friend for decades. Someone with whom I lost contact gradually when I focused so much on Jessica after Linda's death. Thomas, of course I remember. How are you, good? I am in San Diego now. I have my own architecture firm. But listen, I found out something by chance and I need to ask you if it is true. A colleague from Chicago mentioned your daughter is saying around that you have advanced Alzheimer's, that you are very bad. William, what is happening? I froze. Jessica was publicly spreading the Alzheimer's lie that meant she did not know yet that her plan had failed, that she was still building the narrative of my supposed dementia. I told Thomas everything. I omitted nothing. The dinner, the fraud, Richard's debts, the plans to rob me. There was a long silence when I finished. William, those sons of I am so sorry. But listen, I have a proposal. I have been working for 2 years on a big project here in San Diego, a community cultural center with emphasis on sustainability. I need a consultant architect with your experience in structural design. Would you consider coming? The project pays well, $30,000 for 6 months of work. And honestly, I think a change of scenery would do you good. Get away from Chicago. From all this San Diego, a different city, a new project, the possibility of rebuilding not only my legal defense, but my entire life. Let me think about it, Thomas. Right now, I am in the middle of legal proceedings. But it sounds interesting. Think about it. The offer is open and will count on me for whatever you need. Testifying statements, whatever. Those people cannot get away with it. We hung up and I stared at the phone. San Diego. Could I really start over at 68, leave behind Chicago, the city where I built my career? Where my memories with Linda and Jessica grew that night? James cited me to his office to review the final documentation. On his desk were 3 thick folders. Everything ready to file, he announced. Folder 1, criminal complaint for ideological forgery of medical documents. Folder 2, civil lawsuit claiming the $50,000 you lent for the house, arguing it was a documented family loan, not a donation. Folder 3, request for urgent precautionary measure for restraining order and asset protection. When do we file them? I asked. Can we wait until after New Year's if you want to think more? Or we can file them on January 2nd when the courts reopen? You decide. I thought of Jessica sleeping peacefully, believing her plan was still intact. I thought of Richard counting the days to access my money. I thought of the 12 witnesses at that dinner laughing at me. I thought of Ashley and Justin learning that betraying family has no consequences. January the 2nd, I said with a clear voice, let them start the new year discovering they underestimated the old man. James smiled with approval. Perfect. Frank also informed me of something additional. One of Richard's creditors, the betting house, plans to request seizure of the Neepville house the 2nd week of January. When your lawsuits are added to that process, Jessica and Richard are going to encounter a legal tsunami they did not expect. I left the office past midnight. Chicago was celebrating the imminent arrival of the new year with lights and decorations, but I did not feel festive spirit. I felt something different, purpose, determination, and for the first time something resembling hope. I called Thomas. Is your offer for San Diego still standing? Of course, William, are you interested? Very, I need to know. There is life after this, that not everything ends with this betrayal. There is life, friend. A lot of life. I await you here when you are ready. I hung up and looked at the Chicago sky. Tomorrow would be December 31st, New Year's Eve, end of an era, and maybe beginning of something completely unexpected. I spent New Year's Eve alone in my apartment, while Chicago exploded in fireworks and celebrations. I was sitting with a glass of red wine looking at old photographs for the last time at midnight, when the bells rang and people shouted Happy New Year in the streets. I made a silent toast for justice. Linda, I hope you see me from wherever you are and approve of what I am going to do. January 1st, 2024 dawned cold and clear. I received a message from Jessica. Happy New Year, Dad. I hope this year we can resolve our problems. I love you. I read those words 5 times. I love you. How easy it was to write lies. I saved the message as evidence and did not reply. Tomorrow she would know exactly how much she loved me. On January 2nd, I got up at 6:00 a.m. I dressed in my best navy blue suit, the same one I wore when I received the award from the Chicago Architects Association in 2010. If I was going to face this day, I would do it impeccably. I ate breakfast coffee and toast I barely tasted. And at 8 sharp, I was at James's office. He was already there with Frank and a young woman I did not know. William meet Laura Stevens, a process server specialized in urgent cases. She will be the one physically filing the lawsuits in court and serving them. Everything is ready. On the table were 3 sets of documents perfectly organized in folders with colored dividers. James opened them ceremoniously. Criminal complaint for medical document forgery. 19 pages with attachments. The fake reports. Dr. Wilson's certification confirming your full capacity. Sarah's declaration regarding the attempted bank fraud and the emails between Jessica and Richard that Frank found. This goes to the district attorney. He opened the second folder. Civil lawsuit number 1 claim for $50,000 lent for the purchase of the Neepville house. We have the original 2015 document where Jessica signed acknowledging it was a family loan to be returned when her economic situation improved. She never returned $1. Accumulated interest totals $62,000 currently. The third folder was thicker. Civil lawsuit number 2 against Richard Parker for fraudulent mortgage putting your initial investment at risk. And finally, request for urgent precautionary measure restraining order against Jessica and Richard, prohibition to approach you or contact you, and preventive blocking of any future attempt to access your bank accounts or assets. Laura took the folders. I am going straight to the district court. Judge Miller is on duty today, and he is known for being fast with precautionary measures when there is solid evidence. With luck, we will have an answer this same afternoon regarding the restraining order. The civil lawsuits will take weeks to process, but will be recorded today. And the criminal complaint? I asked with a tense voice. That goes to the fraud division, James replied. Due to the gravity of document forgery, it will be treated with priority. A prosecutor will review the case in the next few days and decide if formal investigation proceeds. With the evidence we have, it would be surprising if they did not. Laura left with the folders at 9:00 a.m. James, Frank, and I stayed in the office waiting. The hours passed with torturous slowness. James worked on other cases, but I could not concentrate on anything. I walked back and forth, drank coffee after coffee, looked at the watch every 5 minutes. At 3 p.m., James's phone rang. Laura, yes, I am with him. What happened? He listened for 2 minutes, nodding. When he hung up, he had a big smile on his face. Judge Miller granted the precautionary measure. Restraining order approved. Jessica and Richard cannot come within 500 ft of you, cannot call you or write to you, and any violation will be considered contempt with possible arrest. The court officers will go tomorrow to notify them personally. I felt my legs fail. I let myself fall into a chair. It was real. It was happening. After years of giving, I was finally setting boundaries. Legal limits protected by American justice. But there is more. James continued. Laura spoke with the court clerk. Turns out the Neepville house already has 3 foreclosure proceedings open. One from the betting house for $85,000, one from the IRS for tax debts of Richard for $23,000, and a third from a supplier for $31,000. Your lawsuit claiming the loan adds as a 4th. The judge has ordered urgent appraisal of the property and judicial auction scheduled for late February. Jessica was going to lose the house. In less than 2 months, the mansion I designed and paid for would be sold at public auction to pay the debts Richard accumulated through his incompetence and vice, and she, my daughter, could do nothing to stop it. William, now comes the important part, James said seriously. As soon as they receive the notifications tomorrow, Jessica will bombard you with contact attempts. She will come crying, begging, promising everything was Richard's fault, that she knew nothing. You must be mentally prepared to ignore her completely. Any contact weakens your legal and emotional position. I know, I replied with a firm voice. I already made my decision. There is no going back. That night I did something I had not done since Linda's death. I went to the Holy Name Cathedral near State Street. I am not especially religious, but I needed a silent place to think, to process what I had initiated. I sat in a back pew watching the altar lit by candles. Am I doing the right thing? I whispered to the air. She is my daughter, my only daughter. Am I a monster for doing this? There was no divine answer, but there was internal clarity. Jessica had chosen to betray me. She had forged documents. She had conspired to rob me. She had organized my public humiliation. I was not the monster. I was the victim defending himself. On the morning of January 3rd, I was eating breakfast when my doorbell rang insistently 6, 7, 8 times. I looked through the peephole. It was the doorman, Mr. Sergio, with a worried face. I opened. Mr. Parker, there are 2 court officers downstairs asking for you. They say they need to deliver urgent documentation. Shall I let them up? My heart raced. Yes, please. 5 minutes later, 2 uniformed men knocked on my door. They identified me and handed me 3 official envelopes with court seals. Mr. William Parker, you are hereby notified of the following judicial resolutions. They read formally every document. Restraining order approved. Civil lawsuits recorded with case numbers. Subpoena for declaration as plaintiff in the document forgery case in 15 days. I signed the receipts with a shaking hand. When the officers left, I opened the envelopes and read every word carefully. Everything was there. Black on white judicial seal judge's signature, real, definitive, irreversible. At 11:00 a.m., I received a call from James. The officers just notified Jessica and Richard. They went to the Neatville house half an hour ago. According to one of the officers, Jessica fainted when she read the documents. Richard tried to argue that everything was a misunderstanding, but the officers explained the restraining order is effective immediately, and any attempt to contact you will result in arrest. I tried to feel something compassion perhaps, or remorse, but there was nothing. Only cold emptiness, where paternal love used to live. At 11:15, the messages started. First from unknown numbers. Dad, it is Jessica. Please answer. I need to explain. Everything was Richard's fault. I knew nothing. Please, Dad. Then, messages from her friends' phones. William, this is Jessica speaking from Ellen's phone. Please listen to me. I am desperate. I made mistakes, but I am your daughter. Do not do this to me. I blocked every number without replying. James had foreseen this. No matter what she says, no matter how she begs, it is manipulation. If she really repented, she would not have forged medical documents to rob you. At 1:00 in the afternoon, my phone rang with a private number. I answered by mistake without thinking. Hello, Dad? Thank God. It was Jessica. Desperate voice crying. Dad, please listen to me. I did not want to hurt you. Richard pressured me. He manipulated me. He told me it was the only way to save our house. I never wanted I hung up. My hands were shaking. Her voice, that voice that had called me Dad for 42 years, was now just annoying noise. I turned off the phone completely. That afternoon, I packed some essential things. Clothes, documents, photographs of Linda. I called Thomas in San Diego. When can I start on that project? Whenever you want. William, are you okay? No, but I will be. I need to get out of Chicago. Do you have any contact for temporary rentals in San Diego? Even better. I have a condo in La Jolla that I use for clients. It is empty now. You can stay there while you look for something permanent. No cost. Thomas, I cannot accept. Of course you can. You are my friend. And honestly, after what you told me, you need to be surrounded by people who truly appreciate you. I booked a flight to San Diego for January 5th, 2 days. In 2 days, I would leave behind Chicago. Jessica and 40 years of poisoned memories. That night I turned on the phone again just to send a message to James. I am going to San Diego the day after tomorrow. I need distance. Handle everything as you see fit. I trust you. His response arrived in seconds. Perfect. It is the best thing you can do. I will keep you informed of everything. And William, you're doing the right thing. Never doubt it. I turned off the phone again and looked out the window at the lights of Chicago. Tomorrow would be Epiphany. Kids would receive gifts. Families would celebrate together. I would start packing my life in boxes, preparing to build something new in a city where no one knew me as the betrayed father. Where I could simply be William Parker, architect survivor, free man. January 4th. I spent the whole day packing. I did not take much. 2 large suitcases with clothes, a box with important documents, another with the photographs of Linda I wanted to keep, and my old architect's briefcase with drawing tools I had not touched in years. The rest of the apartment would stay as is. I would not sell it yet. It was my safety anchor in case San Diego did not work out. That afternoon, I received a call from my younger brother, Anthony Parker, whom I had not seen for 3 years. He lived in Boston working as an accountant. William, what the hell is happening? Jessica called me crying hysterically saying you sued her, that you were going to take her house, that you are sick and confused. Is it true I told him everything? Every detail, the fake documents, Richard's debts, the Christmas humiliation, the conspiratorial emails? When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Son of a bitch, Anthony muttered finally. William, I'm so sorry. I always thought Jessica was a good girl, but this is criminal. Do you need anything? Money support, someone to talk to. His solidarity moved me. Thanks, Anthony. I just need you to promise that if Jessica contacts you again, do not tell her where I am or what I'm doing. I need distance. Count on it, brother. For whatever you need, I am here. You should have called sooner. We hung up and I realized something. I had been so focused on Jessica that I neglected other relationships. Anthony, cousins, old friends, all relegated because Jessica consumed all my attention and energy. Maybe San Diego would be an opportunity to reconnect with people who genuinely appreciated me. The night of January 4th, James called me with news. William, the district attorney, has accepted the case. There is a formal investigation open against Jessica and Richard for forgery of public documents. They are going to summon them for a statement next week. Also, Chase Bank filed an additional complaint against Richard for the fraudulent mortgage. The charges are piling up, and the house I asked, the auction is confirmed for February 23rd. Starting price $220,000 with 4 creditors in line, including you. The money will be distributed proportionally after the sale. You will probably recover your $50,000 plus interest. Recovering the money was secondary. The important thing was that Jessica was facing real consequences. She could not simply cry and manipulate her way out of this. On January 5th at 7 in the morning, the doorman, Mr. Sergio, helped me take down the suitcases. Going on a long trip, Mr. Parker's tone was curious but respectful to San Diego, Sergio, indefinitely. I have an architectural project there. I was not lying, simply omitting that I was fleeing from my own daughter. I wish you the best. You were always an exemplary tenant. We shook hands and I called an Uber to O'Hare Airport. The flight left at 9. While Chicago disappeared through the window at 30,000 FT, I felt something strange. Liberation. Every mile that took me away from the city was a mile less of pain, of poisoned memories, of documented betrayal. San Diego received me with brilliant sun and a temperature of 65 degrees, almost spring-like compared to the Chicago winter. Thomas waited for me at the terminal with a genuine smile and a strong hug. Welcome to your new beginning, old friend. The condo in La Jolla was small but luminous. 1-bedroom kitchen integrated into the living room balcony with a view of the Pacific Ocean. It is perfect, I said sincerely. I do not need more than this. Rest today. Tomorrow I will take you to the studio, so you can meet the team and see the blueprints of the cultural center. Thomas patted my shoulder and left, leaving me alone with my suitcases and thoughts. That afternoon I unpacked, slowly placing every object in its new place. Linda's photos went to the nightstand, the legal documents to a drawer, locked with a key, the clothes to the closet. And for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to simply exist without planning, without defending myself, without documenting evidence. On January 6th, Thomas took me to his architecture studio in the gas lamp quarter. It was a modern space in a restored historic building with huge windows and state-of-the-art equipment. I met his team, 5 young architects between 25 and 35, all enthusiastic and talented. This is William Parker, Thomas announced. Many may not know him because he retired 10 years ago, but he was one of the best structural architects in Chicago. He designed the Parker Tower office building, the pedestrian bridge over the river, and at least 20 awarded residential projects. He will help us with the cultural center. The young people looked at me with genuine respect. A girl of about 28 named Clara approached timidly. Mr. Parker, I studied your pedestrian bridge project in college. The way you resolve structural tension with pre-stressed steel cables was brilliant. It is an honor to work with you. I blushed. It had been so long since anyone treated me as a respected professional, only as the old man who supported his ungrateful family. Call me William, please, and the honor is mine. I have not worked on big projects for years. You guys will have to teach me the new technologies. We spent 3 hours reviewing blueprints of the cultural center, a 2-story building with emphasis on sustainability, solar panels, rainwater harvesting systems, recycled materials. It was beautiful, ambitious, exactly the type of project I would have loved when I was 30. And surprisingly, I still loved it at 68. We need your eye for the main auditorium structure, explained Thomas. We want a curved roof without internal columns, but the calculations are complex. Weight force distribution, optimal materials. It is your specialty. For the first time in years, I felt the old passion awakening. Let me check the calculations this weekend. I have some ideas about laminated arch beams that could work. Meanwhile, in Chicago, hell was breaking loose for Jessica and Richard. James kept me informed by email daily. Email from January 7th. Jessica tried to contact Judge Miller directly to clarify misunderstandings. The judge rejected the meeting and warned that any additional attempt to manipulate the process would be considered obstruction of justice. Richard was summoned by the police for questioning regarding the fraudulent mortgage. His defense lawyer is cheap and clearly incompetent. An email from January 9th. The creditors of Richard have preventively seized the family car. An Audi Q5 from 2022 worth $40,000. Jessica arrived at work by bus and apparently had a nervous breakdown at the store. Her boss gave her medical leave for stress. Email from January 12th confirmed. Ashley and Justin were withdrawn from the private school. Monthly tuition of $1,500 that obviously they can no longer pay. The kids now attend public high school in Neepville. According to sources, Ashley is devastated and blames her parents for ruining her life. Every piece of news should have given me satisfaction, but I only felt emptiness. It was not joy for their suffering. It was simple absence of emotional connection, like reading about strangers in the newspaper. On January 15th, while I was working on the structural calculations of the auditorium on the balcony of my condo, my new San Diego phone rang. Only James Thomas and Anthony knew the number. It was James with urgency in his voice. William Jessica managed to find out my number and called me. She cried for 20 minutes, begging me to convince you to withdraw the lawsuits. She says Richard deceived her, that she knew nothing of the gambling debts or the fraudulent mortgage, that she only signed the bank papers because he told her they were normal procedures. Basically, she is blaming Richard for everything. And what did you tell her? I asked, with a neutral voice. The truth. That the emails demonstrate she participated actively in the plan to declare you incompetent. That spitting on your plate during dinner was not Richard's idea, that decisions have consequences, and she must face them. She hung up screaming that you are a heartless monster. Heartless monster. How curious. I did not forge medical documents. I did not conspire to steal. I did not organize public humiliation, but somehow defending myself made me the villain. How's everything else going? I asked, changing the subject. The DA has a date for preliminary hearing March 3rd. If the judge determines there is a case, it will go to full criminal trial probably in May or June. Penalties for document forgery range from 6 months to 3 years in prison. With aggravating factors of family ties and premeditation, probably they will get 2 years minimum, although being first-time offenders, maybe they will be suspended if they pay considerable fines. 2 years of suspended prison fines. Criminal record. Jessica could never work in certain sectors, travel to certain countries, access bank loans. Her life as she knew it had ended. And I, sitting on a balcony in San Diego with a view of the ocean, calculating structural tensions for a beautiful project, felt my life was just beginning. February 2024 passed with strange speed. My days in San Diego acquired a routine I had not experienced in decades. Wake up at 7. Breakfast, coffee, and toast on the balcony, watching the sun rise over the ocean. At 9 I was at Thomas's studio reviewing blueprints and structural calculations. The Cultural Center project absorbed me completely, and I discovered something wonderful. My mind was still sharp. My knowledge was still valid. My passion for architecture had never really died. Clara, the young architect who admired my work, became something like a protege. She asked me technical questions constantly, and I enjoyed teaching her tricks. I learned in 40 years of profession. Technology changes Clara, but physics does not. Gravitational forces remain the same since the Romans built aqueducts. Respect that and you will never be wrong. I also met neighbors in La Jolla. Mrs. Robinson, a 73-year-old lady who walked her dog on the beach every morning, and her son Vincent, a carpenter who helped me fix the balcony door. Simple, honest people who accepted me simply as William the architect without knowing my destroyed family history. But Chicago would not let me escape completely. On February 20th, James called with the news we were waiting for. The auction of the house is the day after tomorrow, February 22nd. Do you want someone to attend in your name? It is not necessary. Just keep me informed of the result. On February 22nd, I was working at the studio when James's email arrived at 4 p.m. House auctioned. Final price $250,000. Buyer Real Estate Investment Company. Fund distribution. Chase Bank recovers $110,000 from the fraudulent mortgage. Betting house collects $85,000. IRS $23,000. The supplier waives his part for legal costs. You received $22,000. Part of your $50,000 claimed. The rest was lost in interest and court costs. Jessica and Richard received nothing. They have 30 days to vacate the property. $22,000 out of the $50,000. I invested a loss of $28,000, but honestly the money did not matter anymore. The important thing was that Jessica was facing the tangible reality of her decisions. The house I built for her, that I paid for, that I designed thinking of her happiness, now belonged to strangers because her husband mortgaged it to feed his gambling addiction. That same night, James sent another email. Jessica tried to request an extension for the eviction, alleging she has nowhere to go with the kids. The judge rejected the request. 30 days, not one more. According to sources, they found a rental apartment in a rougher neighborhood, 600 square feet, $900 a month. It is all they can pay with Jessica's salary. Richard is still unemployed and with a seizure order on any future income until paying his creditors. From a 500-foot mansion in Neatville to a 600-foot apartment, from 2 luxury cars to public transport, from private school to public high school, the consequences were piling up like bricks, building an insurmountable wall between their previous life and their present reality. On March 5th, while enjoying a seafood lunch with Thomas and the team at a restaurant in the Gaslamp Quarter, my phone vibrated with an unknown number. I hesitated, but something compelled me to answer. "Hello, Grandpa." The voice was young, female, hesitant. Ashley. My heart stopped. I had not spoken to my grandkids since Christmas dinner. "Ashley, how did you get this number?" I begged Mom for weeks. "Grandpa, I need to talk to you. Please do not hang up." There was genuine desperation in her voice, very different from the mocking tone of that fateful night. I excused myself from my colleagues and went out to the street. "I am listening." "Grandpa, I did not know. I swear to God, I did not know what Mom and Dad were planning. I thought Christmas dinner was just, I don't know. I thought you were really sick and acting weird. Dad told us you had Alzheimer's. That sometimes sick people get aggressive, and we had to treat you tough to protect us. We were idiots. I was an idiot." And now her voice broke into sobs. I waited in silence while she regained composure. Now we lost everything. The house, the school friends. Mom cries every day. Dad is sunk in depression and does not get out of bed. Justin and I share a tiny room where our beds barely fit. And the worst, Grandpa. The worst is that I realized who gave us everything always. It was you. The English classes, the computers, the bikes, the trips, everything. And we spit on you literally. We laughed in your face when they called you a living embarrassment. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of her words. Ashley was 16, just a child manipulated by unscrupulous parents. But that child had laughed when they humiliated me, had applauded when they wished me dead. Ashley, I appreciate your honesty, really, but you need to understand something. What your parents did was not a simple mistake. They forged medical documents to declare me incompetent. They tried to steal on $120,000 from me. They planned for months to destroy me legally. And you and Justin were part of that plan, even if you did not know the full details. I know, she whispered. And I'm so sorry I cannot sleep at night. I wrote a 12-page apology letter. Can I send it to you? For what, Ashley? So I feel guilty and withdraw the lawsuits. So I give the money again and solve the problems your father created. No, it is not that. It is just, I need you to know I regret it. That if I could go back and defend the grandpa who taught me to ride a bike, who paid for my drawing classes, who was always there when I needed him, I would do it, but I can't. And now you are in San Diego and we are here destroyed. And I just want you to know I love you. That I always loved you. That I was a stupid, manipulated girl, but the love was real. Tears ran down my face uncontrollably. This was harder than facing Jessica. Ashley was a victim too. Although she had participated, she was 16. Her brain was not even fully developed to understand long-term consequences. Ashley listened to me carefully. I forgive you, you and Justin. But forgiving does not mean forgetting or resuming the relationship as if nothing happened. You guys have to grow, mature, understand that actions have weight. There is a bank account in your name and Justin's with $60,000 that you can only access when you turn 25 and are attending college. That is my legacy for you. Education, opportunity, future. But proximity visits being part of my daily life. You lost that on Christmas night? Then we can never see you again. Her voice was a broken whisper. I did not say never. I said not now. Maybe in 5 years, when you are real adults and have learned from this. When you can look me in the eyes without the shadow of what you did. But not now, Ashley. I need to live without that pain. Do you understand? Yes, barely audible. I love you, Grandpa, and I love you guys. That is why I left you that money. But true love sometimes means distance. Take care. Study. Be a better person than your parents. That will be your true apology. I hung up and leaned against the building wall, crying openly. An older couple passing by looked at me with concern. Are you okay, sir? I nodded, unable to speak. I went back to the restaurant with red eyes. Thomas looked at me with understanding. Family. I nodded. I am sorry, friend, but remember you are building something new here. Do not let the past destroy your present. That night alone in my condo, I wrote in my architect's notebook, something that wasn't structural calculation, but personal reflection. Today I spoke with Ashley. She broke my heart again, but this time was different. Before they broke me with hate, today they broke me with late regret. I do not know which is worse, but I know this. I chose to live. I chose San Diego. I chose not to be the eternal victim of their tragedy. And even if it hurts, even if tears fall, I know it was the right decision. On March 8th, James reported officially Jessica and Richard were formally charged by the DA. Criminal trial set for May 20th. The evidence is overwhelming. Their lawyers are trying to negotiate a deal. Admission of guilt in exchange for reduced and suspended penalties. Would you accept that if it includes a permanent no-contact order prohibition to approach within 500 FT of me and a considerable fine that guarantees they learned the lesson? Yes, I do not want cruel revenge. I want peace. I will discuss it with the prosecutor. I think it is reasonable. March ended with a strange mixture of pain and hope. Jessica had lost her house, her reputation, her stability. But I had gained something unexpected. A new life in San Diego work I loved, genuine friends, and the absolute certainty that surviving family betrayal was possible. The architect had rebuilt. Not buildings this time, but his own existence. April 2024 arrived with California spring in all its splendor. The flowers lining the streets of La Jolla bloomed, filling the air with sweet scent. I'd been in San Diego for 3 months and something extraordinary had happened. I had stopped counting the days since the betrayal. I no longer woke up thinking about Jessica. I no longer compulsively checked James's emails looking for updates on the legal case. I simply lived. The Cultural Center project was advancing magnificently. My calculations for the curved roof of the auditorium had been approved by the city, and construction would begin in June. Thomas had raised my salary to $50,000 annually after my designs received praise from independent structural engineers. "You are an investment, not an expense," he told me, patting my back. "The project improved 50% since you arrived." But the most important thing was not money or professional recognition. It was something more subtle. I had recovered my identity as William Parker architect, not as William Parker betrayed father. The difference was abysmal. On April 9th, a rainy Tuesday, I met Sophia. The cultural center where we worked organized weekly conferences open to the public about urban sustainability. That afternoon, I gave a talk on bioclimatic architecture. How to design buildings that use sunlight, natural ventilation, and local materials to reduce energy consumption. There were about 30 people in the makeshift auditorium. I spoke for 45 minutes showing examples of old projects of mine and explaining techniques I learned in 40 years of profession. When I finished and opened for questions, a woman of about 62 with short silver hair and intelligent eyes raised her hand. "William, my name is Sophia. I am a literature professor at UCSD. My question is, how do we convince real estate developers who only think of immediate profits to invest in sustainable construction, which is more expensive initially, but profitable in the long term?" Her question was incisive, intelligent, and revealed deep understanding of the problem. I answered honestly, you cannot always Some developers only see quarterly numbers, but my strategy was always to show data. A bioclimatic house saves 40% on heating and cooling. In 20 years, those savings exceed the additional initial cost. If they do not listen to you with logic, look for developers with long-term vision. They exist, although they are a minority. After the talk, Sophia approached. Sorry to insist, but your answer was exactly what I needed to hear. I am writing an article for a cultural magazine about architecture and literature, how buildings tell stories of their societies. Would you have time for a coffee and a brief interview? Something tells me you already know the answer. There is an excellent coffee shop nearby. We ended up talking for 3 hours. Sophia had been a widow for 6 years. Her husband died of cancer. She had 2 adult children living in New York and Boston. She visited regularly but enjoyed her independence. She was passionate about classic literature, especially Hemingway and Fitzgerald. When I asked her why she was interested in architecture, she replied, "Because buildings are poems in stone and steel. Each one tells stories of who created it and who inhabits it." I mentioned nothing about Jessica or my past. I only spoke of architecture of San Diego, of my rediscovery of the work I loved. And Sophia, with sensitivity that only comes from having suffered well, did not ask why a 68-year-old architect had started over in an unknown city. She simply accepted my present. We said goodbye with a promise to repeat the coffee. I walked back to La Jolla, feeling something I had not experienced since before Linda's death. Genuine human connection without hidden agendas, without expectations of money or favors. Only 2 people enjoy intelligent conversation. Meanwhile, in Chicago, Jessica's world was crumbling completely. On April 15th, James sent an email with an almost somber tone. "William, I need to inform you of something delicate. Jessica had a severe nervous breakdown at work. Apparently, a customer asked why someone with pending criminal charges was working serving up the public. Jessica exploded, screamed, had a panic attack. Management gave her indefinite leave without pay. Basically, they fired her without firing her to avoid labor lawsuits. Jessica without a job with 2 kids, rent of $900 a month, and Richard unemployed with garnished debts. How would they survive? Part of me, the part that remembered changing her diapers and teaching her to read, felt a pang of concern. But the wiser part, the one that had learned painfully, knew that helping her now would only perpetuate the cycle. She had made her bed, now she had to sleep in it." The email continued. The DA accepted the plea deal. Jessica and Richard formally acknowledged charges of document forgery and attempted fraud. In exchange, 2 years of suspended prison, upon payment of a fine of $15,000 each, $30,000 total, permanent no contact order with you of $500 for a criminal record that can be expuned after 5 years if they do not reoffend. The judge will sign the sentence on May 20th. Do you accept these terms? $30,000 they did not have. Criminal record permanent restraining order. Yes, it was fair. Not cruel, but definitely fair. I accept, I replied. Let this chapter close. On May 20th, while I was having lunch with Sophia, we had met 5 more times. Our friendship was growing naturally towards something deeper. I received a message from James. Sentence signed. Jessica and Richard have 6 months to pay the $30,000. If they do not, the prison sentence ceases to be suspended. Restraining order effective immediately. Case legally closed. Congratulations, William. You won. I had won. I looked at Sophia telling me animatedly about her literature students. The May sun shining on her silver hair, her genuine laughter filling the space between us. I looked at the blueprint of the cultural center on my tablet, the messages from Clara, asking technical details, the invitation from Thomas for dinner at his house on Saturday. I looked at my life. Simple, honest, full of meaningful work and real human connections. Yes, I had won. Not because Jessica lost, but because I had recovered something I thought dead. Hope. Are you okay? Sophia asked, noting my silence. You look pensive. I am more than okay, I replied with a genuine smile. I was thinking that sometimes losing what you thought you needed allows you to find what you really need. She tilted her head with a curious expression, but did not ask more. That was the beauty of Sophia. She respected silences. She understood that we all carry past. We will explain when we are ready. On May 25th, Frank sent a final unsolicited report. William, I know the case is legally closed, but I thought you would want to know. Jessica applied for social aid from the state of Illinois. They are living on a subsidy of $500 a month plus food stamps. Richard entered a state F-funded rehab program for gambling addiction. Ashley and Justin are on full scholarship at the public high school due to vulnerable family status. Their housing is at risk because they cannot pay full rent. Probably will end up in subsidized housing. I read the report 3 times. This was the raw reality. My daughter, who grew up with everything, now depended on state charity. My grandkids, used to luxury, now lived on poverty scholarships. Richard, the man who wished me dead, humiliated in mandatory therapy. Should I feel triumph, satisfaction? I felt none of that, only distant sadness, like observing a tragedy happening to strangers in a distant country. It was not my responsibility to fix it. It never was. I replied to Frank, thanks for the information. Thanks. Please do not send me more updates about them unless they violate the restraining order. I need to move on. June arrived with intense Californian heat. The Cultural Center officially began construction with an opening ceremony where Thomas presented me publicly as co-architect and structural soul of the project. There was applause, photographs, an article in the San Diego Union Tribune titled 69-year-old Chicago architect designs the sustainable future of San Diego. Sophia attended the ceremony. Afterward, walking on the beach in La Jolla, she took my hand for the first time. William, I do not know what happened in your life before San Diego, and I do not need to know until you want to tell me. But I want you to know I admire the man I see now. Talented, gentle, reborn, at an age where many only wait for the end. I squeezed her hand without words. At 69, I'd found something I thought lost forever. Not just budding romantic love, but mutual respect, chosen companionship, shared future built on honesty. December 2024. Exactly 12 months have passed since that Christmas dinner that changed my life forever. I'm sitting on the deck of my new house in La Jolla. Not the temporary condo Thomas lent me, but a home I bought in September, 1,500 square FT, with a view of the Pacific Ocean. A small garden where I grow tomatoes and basil, and a glass-walled studio where I draw blueprints and read contemporary architecture books. Sophia is in the kitchen making hot chocolate. We became an official couple in July. And although we maintain our independence, we spend 5 nights a week together, alternating between her place and my house. No rush, no pressures. Only 2 mature people enjoy mutual company built on respect and honesty. The Cultural Center was officially inaugurated on November 15th. The mayor of San Diego attended along with representatives of the Architecture Association and over 200 people. The building is beautiful. Modern lines respecting the Californian landscape, solar panels, generating 70% of necessary energy, vertical gardens purifying the air, and that auditorium with curved roof without columns. That was my most significant contribution. When the lights turned on for the first time, illuminating the laminated wood structure I designed, I felt something I had not experienced since my 30s. Pure pride for a job well done. Architectural Digest published an 8-page report on the project in their December edition. There is a photo of me next to Thomas and the young team, all smiling in front of the finished building. The headline says, William Parker, the architect who reborn at 69 and redefined San Diego's urban sustainability. The article mentions, I retired years ago, but returned with renewed strength. It does not mention why I retired nor why I returned. That story is mine, not the public's. But today, December 24th, 2024, while the sun sets over the Pacific, dyeing the sky orange and pink, I allow myself to reflect on everything that happened. Jessica never paid the $30,000 fine. She couldn't. In October, the suspended prison sentence was reactivated. James informed me that she and Richard would serve 6 months in jail, starting January 2025. Ashley and Justin would go temporarily with Jessica's sister, my niece Lucy, in Boston. It was sad, inevitable just. When James gave me the news, he waited for my reaction. Do you want to do something? Technically, you could pay the fine and prevent them from going to prison. No, I replied with absolute clarity. I am not going to rescue her again. Decisions have consequences. She chose this path when she forged documents to rob me. Now she must walk it to the end. In November, I received a letter from Ashley. It arrived through James, respecting the no direct contact order. It was long 12 pages written by hand with shaky handwriting. It recounted her horrible year, the loss of the house, the shame at school, the cruel comments from classmates, the hunger when there was not enough money, watching her mother sink into depression, witnessing her father attempt suicide in August, saved by paramedics. But it also spoke of learning, understanding the value of money, appreciating what I gave them for years, without demanding anything, understanding that privilege is not a right, but a gift that can be lost. The letter ended. Grandpa, I do not ask you to forgive us completely or to come back. I know that will not happen soon, maybe never. I just want you to know that Justin and I are studying hard, getting the best grades of our lives, working weekends, cleaning tables at restaurants to help with expenses. We are learning to be people you could be proud to know. Someday, when we turn 25 and access that money you left us, we will use it for college. We will not waste it. We promise. And if someday, many years from now, you want to see us, we will be ready. We love you, Ashley and Justin. I cried reading that letter, but I did not call, I did not write, I simply kept the pages in a box next to Linda's photos. Maybe in 5 years, when they are fully formed adults, when they have demonstrated with facts, not words that they learned. We can have coffee and civilized conversation maybe, but not now. Sophia comes out to the deck with 2 mugs of hot chocolate. What are you thinking about? She asks, sitting next to me. That exactly a year ago, I was driving under the snow after the worst humiliation of my life, and today I am here with you, looking at the ocean, having built something beautiful, feeling more alive than in the last 2 decades. She smiles and takes my hand. Do you know what Clara told me the other day? That you are the best mentor she has had? That she learned more in 10 months with you than in 5 years of college? That when she is older, she wants to be an architect like you, passionate, ethical building, thinking of future generations? That fills me more than any award or recognition. I am leaving a real legacy, not in ungrateful children, but in talented young people who will carry forward what they learned from me. Tomorrow, Thomas and his family are coming for lunch here, Sophia says. Also, Clara, Vincent the carpenter, Mrs. Robinson, and her grandkids, 17 people in total. Are you sure your house can handle so many people? It was designed for that, I reply with a smile. When I bought it, the architect in me thought, this house must have space for family, but not necessarily blood family. Chosen family, built on genuine affection and mutual respect. That is the deepest truth I learned this year. Family is not who shares your last name or your DNA. Family is who is present when it hurts, who celebrates your triumphs without envy, who respects you even in disagreement. Jessica shared my blood but destroyed my trust. Thomas, Sophia, Clara. All the people in San Diego I met in these months gave me something much more valuable, Earned belonging, not imposed. That night, lying next to Sophia while she sleeps, I review my finances on the tablet. The green tech stocks I bought in 2018 are now worth $320,000. The Chicago apartment I rented for $2,500 monthly to a young couple. This house in La Jolla costs $300,000 but is worth more every day. My annual salary of $50,000 allows me to live comfortably, and most importantly, I have projects. 3 Californian companies contacted me asking for consulting on sustainable design. My schedule is full until 2026. At 69, I am richer, more realized, and happier than ever. And I achieved it not by inheriting or stealing or manipulating. I achieved it with honest work, brave decisions, and the will to start over when everything seemed lost. I get up silently and go to the studio. I open my architect's notebook, that one where for months I documented Jessica's betrayal. I turn the pages, dates, calculations, printed emails, notes of pain. I reach the last written page, that one from March, where I reflected on Ashley's call, and I write a final entry. December 24th, 2024. A year later, Jessica will go to prison in January. My grandkids are learning hard but necessary lessons. I am in San Diego in my house by the ocean, surrounded by people I chose and who chose me. I have learned that the best revenge is not destroying the one who betrayed you. It is building a life so full, so meaningful, so beautiful, that they realize they lost the privilege of being part of it. Linda, if you see me from wherever you are, I hope you are proud. I not only survived, I was reborn. And at 69, I discovered that life does not end when they betray you. It simply starts a different chapter. One that you write without manipulation, without lies, without chains. I'm free. Finally completely free. I close the notebook. Tomorrow will be Christmas. Not like last year's full of hate disguised as family celebration. It will be real Christmas. Genuine love, honest laughter, gratitude for being alive and conscious in this precise moment. I look through the studio window toward the dark ocean. Somewhere in Chicago, Jessica sleeps in a miserable apartment counting days to prison. And here in San Diego, I breathe salty air-designed buildings of the future and love a woman who accepts me complete without asking me to be a bank or savior. The architect learned the most important lesson of his career. Before building for others, you must build for yourself. Solid foundations of dignity, self-respect, and the unbreakable will not to allow anyone, not even your own blood, to destroy the structure of your life. This is my masterpiece, not the San Diego Cultural Center, although it is beautiful. Not the buildings I designed in 40 years. My masterpiece is William Parker at 69, reborn, free, happy, and that is true architecture. If you like this story, give a like to the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box on the left. Thanks for watching.